Hi everyone, welcome. You know, there's a really popular app out there for iPhones right now called Hipstamatic. And if you're not familiar with that look, here's a couple examples. You can see it's got that cross-processed grungy sort of look, a little bit of vignette here in the corners. Oftentimes they're in the shape of a square, but not always. Here's an example of one that was done with a rectangle shape. So I thought that today we would see how we could duplicate a similar look here in Elements. We're going to use this image as our example today, and you can see that it will be a rectangle example. The first thing we're going to do is create that cross-process look, and for that we'll be using several adjustment layers. Now before I start, this will work in all versions of Elements. I'm using Elements 8 today, so there'll be some slightly different looks, but all the techniques are exactly the same. One difference is the Layers panel over here instead of the Layers palette that you're familiar with in other versions. And a second difference will be the adjustment layers and where they appear. Here in Elements 8 we have the adjustment panel, and in other versions when you create an adjustment layer you'll get a dialog box out here on your window. But again, it'll all work exactly the same. So to start, let's move down here to the adjustment layer icon. In earlier versions you'll find this icon and all the other layer icons up here at the top of your palette. So we'll just click on that and come down here to Levels. The first thing we're going to do is pull down this menu, which is a color channel menu. Right now it's set to the master RGB channel. If I click on that, I can choose between the red, green, or blue channels, and we're just going to tweak each channel just a little bit. So I'll start with red. And I'm just going to experiment. There's no magic formula or anything here. I'm just going to grab the white triangle and slide that. As I do, you can see the red start to intensify there, out there in the image. I don't want quite that much, so we'll bring it about there, and then the black will counterbalance that a little bit with some greens and a little bit of blue. So again, no magic numbers or settings or anything, just looking and seeing if it is creating what I'm going for. So there is a before and after. I'm clicking this little eye down here on the adjustment panel. If you're in an earlier version of Elements, you can accomplish the same thing by clicking this icon right here. It's before and after. So let's start there, and then we'll create another levels adjustment layer, and this time let's try the green channel. We'll tweak that a little bit. Add a little bit of green in by sliding the white triangle, counterbalance that. You can see the grass darkening there a little bit. You can tweak some of this, maybe something right about there. And then we'll create a third one and do the same thing for the blue channel. I really want to add a lot of yellow back in, so I'm going to bring this black triangle up fairly high to bring in that warm yellowy sort of look. Alright, so let's take a look at what we have. Here we have our 4 layers. If you want to see a before and after, you can hold down Option or Alt on your keyboard and then click the eyeball of the background layer, which will turn off all the other layers and show you before and after. Alright, so that's not too bad. Now one other characteristic of this Hipstamatic look is a very high contrast. So I'm going to add a 4th levels adjustment layer, and on this one I'm going to leave the color channel set to the master RGB, and we're just going to create some more contrast. Try to brighten that up just a little bit. And if it's too intense for you, you can see this area here along the ridge of the house got a little bit bright. I'm not sure that's the look I'm going for. But what we can do then is come up here to the opacity setting and then lower that opacity just a little bit. So here's without and with that little high contrast sort of look there to the house. For our next step, we need a composite of all the layers here. So let's click on the top layer, and then on a PC hold down Control, Alt, and Shift. On a Macintosh that would be Command, Option, Shift, and then press the letter E. And that will make a composite of all the layers right here. So now we can work on this layer, and if we make a mistake we can delete it and we still have our individual layers here. For our Vignette Effect, we're going to duplicate this layer by pressing Control or Command J on our keyboard, and then on that duplicate let's change the blending mode to multiply. And multiply will darken the whole image. Now you can decide how dark you want to take it. I'd like mine a little darker, so I'm going to duplicate that layer to intensify it, and actually I'm going to duplicate it one more time to really make those edges nice and dark. So now we have 3 layers all set to multiply right here. We need to combine all those 3 layers together. So click on the top one, hold down Shift, click on the bottom one to select them all, and then if you press on your keyboard Control or Command E, that will merge all those selected layers together. For our vignette effect, we just need to move over to our eraser tool, and with a very large eraser, much larger than I have here, so I'm going to press the right bracket key on my keyboard to really bump that up. I have a very soft edge on my eraser. To set your edges, by the way, holding down Shift and pressing the right bracket key will sharpen or harden the edge of your brush. Holding down Shift and the left bracket key will soften. And with an opacity on my eraser set to, let's try about 50 or so, 55, we can then come in and erase on the parts that we want to be a bit brighter, leaving the edges dark and creating our vignette. So now that we have that created, let's merge these 2 layers together. Again, I'll press Control or Command E, and that will merge the top one down with the bottom one. On that copied layer there, or the merged layer, excuse me, we'll duplicate that. Control or Command J one more time. And on this top layer, let's add a blur. So we'll go to Filter, Blur, and over to Gaussian Blur. Now on this low-res image, I have a very low radius set for my blur. You can see the before and after. I don't want a lot of blur, just a little bit. If you're using a high-res image, you may need to use a higher number here. So I'll click OK. And the reason we did this on a duplicated copy was that so that we could take our eraser tool, let's knock it down in size a little bit by pressing the left bracket key, and then erase the parts that we don't want to be blurry, like maybe the window here. In fact, I might erase a little bit harder by increasing the opacity. So erase the window, maybe along the porch in the front, some of the detail back here in the bushes, the sign, that sort of thing. Just some random areas like that. And when we're happy and satisfied with that look, we can again merge these 2 layers down together by pressing Control or Command E. And now all that's left is our frame. Now there's a feature in Elements 8 that allows us to have our documents open in a tab, which is what I have here. I need to get that out of a tab. So I'm going to simply click on the tab and drag down to open it in its own window. And then off camera I have a file that has a frame in it. So I'll simply drag that up to open that in a tab as well. So I'll drag that and bring my image back in by going to Window, and down here to my house image. Now this frame came from a program called Frame It. You can get frames anywhere you like. A lot you can find on the internet to download for free. You can make your own, certainly. We'll provide this frame for you as a download to go along with the video. To get it into this image, all we need to do is select the Move tool, and then if I hold down Shift while I drag it, click on the frame and drag into the house image, holding down Shift will center it right there. And then from here I could enlarge it if I want and reposition it slightly until I am satisfied. Hit Enter or Return, and there we have it. The hipstamatic sort of look right here in Photoshop Elements. Well, thanks a lot for watching. Hope you enjoyed the project, and we'll see you next time.